Greetings, I am Erin Patton, metaphysical master in a millennial age, and it is my life's purpose to guide you and organizations along an enlightened path. So I invite you to sit comfortably and tune in as I welcome you to the Meta Business Millennial, where we get the real conversations you won't get in the boardroom so that we understand this is exactly the path we need to be on in order to grow, evolve, and thrive. Greetings, y'all. I am Erin Patton, also known as Master L, and welcome to today's very special live episode of the Meta Business Millennial podcast. We are live across all platforms: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you want, you can find us. And if you haven't already, I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel or follow me on any social media platform at I am Erin Patton. And of course, I would appreciate it so much if you would share this video with a friend. Leave me a comment, shoot me a DM, because I really want to start to hear from you all around how these messages resonate with you. And without further ado, I want to jump right in because I am just really excited to talk about today's topic, y'all, because it's really kind of near and dear to me personally. And also, it also speaks to, I believe, just the consciousness in general, just the collective consciousness is everyone's expected to be strong. And it's a fucking struggle. And especially for Black women, it's a super struggle. And so, yeah, I really wanted to talk about that today. And I'm glad to see that y'all can hear me okay. Y'all can see me good. So we can go ahead and jump right in. And I wanted to first start by defining some things so we can really understand where we're coming from with this work, because I don't ever want to just, even though before in my podcast, I did a lot of channeling, I did a lot of direct experience sharing, which I will do today, but I want to start grounding us in facts and statistics around all the things that we're talking about. Because one thing that I was very appreciative of when I started my consciousness journey, when I started my spiritual journey, is you have to fact check. You can listen, you can learn, you can take in. It's like the meme, listen, but don't judge. You listen, you don't judge. And you also take the initiative to do your own research, to find the facts, to really ground yourself in that which you're hearing, so you can really start to decipher what truth is and what truth isn't. Because that's essentially the world that we live in right now. It's a war on the mind, a psychic warfare, as some people call it. And so in order to be able to survive the warfare is to always be seeking truth, always be, of course, tending to your frequency, which we'll speak to more. So let's get to the truth of that which we're discussing today. And I want to start with this definition again. Like I said, I want to define things for you all very loud and clearly so we can be here on the same page together. And of course, chat with me, drop comments, live. I'll be sure to, answer questions as I can. And just so we understand what we're talking about today, we're talking about the strong Black woman syndrome. Okay. And this is actually, by the American Psychological Association. It is a medical term, and it is really defined as the cultural expectation for Black women to suppress emotions and handle everything alone, contributing to high rates of anxiety and emotional burnout. Okay, does this sound familiar? I mean, because it showed us to me, I have to say. And, a lot of that which has even inspired my consciousness journey, my spiritual journey, came from experiencing this. And so I don't know how much this resonates with people. I see some people in the room, so definitely let me know how that definition resonates with you. But for me, when I think about sort of my own personal experience, certainly the anxiety, the emotional burnout were the primary symptoms, if you will, that showed me, wow, I need help. And not only do I need help, my mom, I saw this in my mom, like mirrored in my mom. I saw this mirrored in my grandmom, both my grandmothers. And so this is not just something that's new. I know a lot of times we're like, wow, like I wonder if my mom went through this. These are generational wounds that I'm speaking to. The work that we're doing here with the Meta Business Millennial and Aaron Patton in general for Black women, generational work. So don't ever feel like diminished for having, challenges with anxiety or emotional burnout and thinking, or depression, and thinking, wow, nobody in my family ever had this, or nobody ever talked about this before, because they didn't have the awareness to. And what we're here to do collectively, and what I'm here to teach, is how to become more aware of these things in your life so that you can take the necessary steps to heal them and enjoy your lives better. And, another reason, what I want to get into, why Black women, the Black women syndrome is so acute in today's age, is because of the brokenness of the family. And I didn't include this necessarily in a quote here, but it came up for me when I was just preparing for today's episode. And it is such a beautiful scripture from the Bible. Actually, it's from Mark 3:25. And it reads, "And if a house is divided against itself, that house will not be able to stand." And I'll read that scripture again. "And if a house is divided against itself, that house will not be able to stand." And I read this scripture because I want to start to get into the cultural and societal impacts of why Black women are struggling. The strong Black woman is struggling because the house is divided. And particularly the house, meaning Black men, are by and large absent from the family structure. And not to point fingers at the Black family, as opposed, but we did talk about this on the loneliness episode podcast around the Black family and marital statistics, and how a family is the cornerstone of generational wealth. That if we aren't becoming more aware of this in a way that we can heal and problem solve, then we're going to continue to be a house divided. And to speak to this division a little bit more clearly, I want to bring up another statistic. And this one reads, 1 in 3 Black men born today can expect to be incarcerated at some point in their lifetime, compared to 1 in 17 white men. And this essentially is from the Sentencing Project, which is a nonprofit that offers statistics around incarceration. And those statistics are not surprising to me because I've known them quite some time. I actually think it's greater than 1 in 3 Black men. But, essentially having and let me just pull up another statistic before we get into it. So the absence of Black fathers destabilizes families and communities, as 70% of Black children are born to single parent households, often due to incarceration. And I want to read this one again because it really builds on the 1 in 3 Black men that I shared earlier statistic. The absence of Black fathers destabilizes families and communities, as 70% of Black children are born to single parent households, often due to incarceration. And this is from the US Census Bureau. Okay, y'all. It can't get more it can't get more realer than that, coming from the US Census Bureau. That's from the government itself, who's that's a whole different conversation about their role in the incarceration. So when we're talking about a house divided, when we bring up that scripture around a house divided cannot stand, and you're telling me that 70% of Black children are growing up in single parent households, then what do you feel, how you can deduce from those numbers that the stability of the Black household in the United States is completely divided and unstable and cannot stand? And if a house cannot stand, what does that mean? There's no security, there's no stability, so there's nothing upon which we can build. So we're going to always be in a cycle of poverty, whether it's poverty money, poverty mindset, all of it's the same. And so, Yeah. Yes. Thank y'all for joining in with these statistics. Yes, 1 in 3. And so I really am not just taken aback by these statistics, but I wanted to share them with you all so that we can really begin to ground ourselves, like I said again, in what's happening in our Black communities. And of course, we listen, we don't judge. We listen, we don't judge. This is not about judging the Black community. This is about understanding where we are today so that we can do what we have to do to heal ourselves, heal the people around us, and grow, which we will definitely get into in today's episode. I just want to make sure that we're understanding what's going on in our community and that we're grounded in what's happening today. And so, with that, I want to show you all this video so that we can really start to understand the impact of this divided house on the Black woman, the strong Black woman, and not only her, but her children. Have a look at this.
So, disclaimer, this is not a video for sympathy or likes or anything like that. This is just to show that being a single mother with little to no help from anyone else can be difficult most of the time. And so I just want to tell all the single mothers out there who have their children 24/7, don't get a lot of assistance, don't get a lot of, oh, I'll keep them on the weekends, can't always buy your kids the best things because you have to buy what they need. You have to buy them food. You have to make sure they have a roof over their heads. You have to make sure that they know that they're loved and nurtured in the home. So it's hard to take that time for yourself, but just know that your time is coming and don't give up.
Your time is coming, sis. And I agree. Do not give up. I am like teary eyed watching that video. I can't even lie. Um, because I'm her, she is me. And we've all been there where we're like literally crying and still having to show up for our fucking families and show up for ourselves with no help. With no help. And this is essentially what I'm getting at when I talk about this quiet struggle of the single Black woman or the strong Black woman, because there are a lot of times when people are in relationships or people are in marriages and still feeling single, still feeling alone. So I don't want to just say this just about the single women. The strong Black woman comes in many forms, and the strong Black woman syndrome too also comes in many forms. And women just like her are, doing it all and with very little resources. And that's why it literally like brings tears to my eyes because I totally feel her. I've been there before, I've been in these situations, and I'll get into my story certainly shortly, but just want to continue to elucidate the issues and help ground us in the facts and helping us understand that Black women are 2.2 times more likely to be family caregivers than white women. This includes caring for children, elderly family members, and other dependents. And I know y'all are very familiar with this because how many times, even as children, we're growing up, we got cousins that staying with us, or like cousins, or uncles and aunts, or sick family members, we're tending to, that we're always seeing. And this is obviously my story too. Like today, I'm single mother of my 5-year-old. I'm a single caregiver of my mother. And, I'm totally like this statistic. And yeah, married and single is totally real. um that's certainly a truth. And to continue to elucidate this, or clarify this, is like nearly 60% of Black caregivers report working full time while managing caregiver duties. So how we're talking about the video with the woman, and she's showing herself getting her kids breakfast together, then she got to go to work, then she has to come back and care for 4 kids, then probably other family members and things. This is my story too, like working full time. I'm here with you all doing my podcast. Last week I was doing my podcast during snow time, and my son came in and it was a a whole fiasco. The camera went off, so it's just like when we're doing all this stuff and we're having to work it continues to compound the stress. It compounds the weight of the issue, and we want to be able to understand really what people are going through. And so, you know, this having to kind of play dual roles as the breadwinner, as the caregiver, as the nurturer, as the protector, you're playing all these roles, it can absolutely lead to what we saw in the strong Black woman syndrome: anxiety, emotional burnout, depression, all of those things. And this is not just targeted to uh, poor Black women, or just people without social status, because what I'm about to show you right now is Taraji P. Henson, who is a very famous, very wealthy, very beautiful single Black woman who is speaking to her own struggles with the strong Black woman syndrome. And I want you all to have a look at this.
Struggle with depression and anxiety. I would have to say I realized it about 2 years ago. I noticed the mood swings. Like, one day I'd be up and the next day I'd be down, feeling like I don't want to go out in public, almost agoraphobic, like, too much to deal with. And then there would be days where my brain wouldn't stop racing, I would think of the most worst scenarios in the world, which would heighten my anxiety. And, people were like, you just need to meditate and yoga and things like that. And I would do that, but my brain would still race. For me, there was no shame when I started to recognize it. It was like that I have to get some help because I'm the life of the party.
You heard that? She the life of the party, but when she goes dark, she goes dark. Okay? And what that means for people that aren't familiar necessarily is this depression, essentially the darkness. And Black women are 50% less likely than white women to seek treatment for depression, despite nearly exhibiting twice the symptoms. And this is from Johns Hopkins University, y'all. So if Taraji P. Henson, who we would look at and say she got all the money, all the fame, all the support, all the love, if she can go in dark places and be agoraphobic. So agoraphobic is essentially like being afraid of closed spaces, fear of going out of the house, leaving the house, being seen. It's essentially like a very severe anxiety, social anxiety. And this woman her job is to be social and to be seen and love and dote on people. And if she is having this challenge, then you absolutely know that so many more of us are. So many more Black women are. So that's why I say we listen, we don't judge, and we understand that what we're going through is actually a shared experience. And, it was brought up in the comments that sometimes we don't even recognize we are depressed. And that is an absolute truth. And so when we're going through life and we're going through the motions, a lot of times, even our family members, our church members will be like, girl, you strong, you got this, you strong, you can keep going. That's really like a very common response to when, at least in my experience, when I was going through something and I would be telling girlfriends what I'm going through. You're the strongest person I know, but I'm feeling really low and I'm feeling like I can't do this. So to really invalidate that emotion of the darkness and the depression is a horrible thing to do, for lack of better words. And it really does a disservice and a dishonoring of yourself. That's essentially what it is that when we're going through this healing journey, it's all about honoring ourselves. And when we are not paying attention to our emotions, if we're shutting them down or glossing them over with, I'm strong, I can do it, I'm brave, this is a complete dishonoring of self. And that's not the direction that we want to go and how we want to show up for ourselves in the best way possible. Okay. So I don't know if any of you are feeling like this connection or this resonance, but if you are, I certainly invite you to just like it, shoot me a comment, share this. I really want to start to hear from you guys about how this is resonating with you. So don't be shy to engage with me all around this. And I really want to start to get into my own personal experience around this, because I feel like that is a very kind of like natural segue after kind of showing you all the statistics, after showing you all the videos of Taraji and the beautiful woman who was managing 4 kids by herself, is that this depression definitely is something that I experienced as a young girl, and not just from myself, but from my mother. And interestingly enough, when I was a child, I remember my mom telling me that my grandmother suffered from depression, and she was on depression medication actually when I was a child. So I'll be visiting her and she would be like, literally like, I'm depressed. And she would be on depression medication and actually had been to a mental hospital before. And so had my mom. And, the story behind what happened with my mom is that, when I was very much the 70% of the Black kids that grew up in a single parent household due to incarceration, because my father got caught up in his office. My dad was a doctor, medical doctor, a doctor's office scandal, was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. And so I spent the majority of my childhood from ages around 6 to 12, 13 without a father, and having to visit him in prison and receive gifts from him from prison, like handkerchiefs painted or little sewn stuffed dolls, lots of letter writing and poems. My dad wrote a lot of poems when he was in prison. So I was definitely that child growing up in a single parent household due to incarceration. And when my dad left to go to prison, it was shortly after my sister was murdered in a crime of passion. And so after my sister was murdered, and then my mom dealing with the issues with my dad going away, she had essentially a nervous breakdown and was about to commit suicide. So she went to a mental hospital, and I was essentially left to my own devices, like having to raise myself pretty much. And not to say that my mom wasn't there for me. And when she came back and didn't cook beautiful meals and had Christmases and took me to all my activities, yet emotionally, the support wasn't there. Like, she just didn't have the tools herself to care for herself. So she definitely didn't have the tools to give and impart to me. Okay. So in that regard, I'm also growing up, seeing my mom crying, just like the woman we saw here, and trying to console her and be like, Mama, you have me. But, really it's just like, this is a really hard place for a child to be in. Let's just put it that way. And in that kind of dark time for myself and for my mom, one thing she would always tell me would be like, you need to have your own job, you need to get your own money, you need to pay your own bills, and you need to be able to take care of your goddamn self, because you can't depend on a man. That was my upbringing. Okay. And not to say that it wasn't her truth, because unfortunately she was put in a situation where that became her reality and she had to do for herself. Yet at the same time, it was a very harsh programming for me to then start to believe that for a long time. Because look at me, I'm 40 and still doing for myself, paying my own bills, everything in my own name, not having the support, because it was so entrenched. And not just from my mom, but in media, like, you're watching Waiting to Exhale, everyone's single, and, I can do everything by myself. And then you have Destiny's Child, independent women, and Lil Boosie, independent, and so it was really a program, I believe, that was deeply, deeply embedded in my psyche, and probably a lot of Black women's psyche, around being independent, being single, and understanding that this was just going to be my reality and accepting that as my reality. Okay. So by the time I got to my 30s and had done all these achievements, going to all these great academic institutions, working and living in New York, traveling to over 30 countries around the world, here I am settling for essentially a sperm donor, a relationship that's not giving anything. I'm actually taking care of his ass financially, housing him, doing all the things for him. And for my son and for my mom, who was going through her challenges with mental illness and dementia. And here I am accepting, like, wow, this is not actually what I desire. So I've worked really hard to be a single woman caring for everyone, and was completely unhappy, unsupported, like deeply, deeply sad, depressed, if you will, suicidal, all of the things. And I, on the exterior, looked like a beautiful, strong Black woman. I was president of this association and president of that association, speaking at commencement ceremonies and definitely sharing my story. But my reality was just dismal, if you will, lonely, sad. And essentially, that's when I knew that I had to go on this healing journey. And I talk about this more or less every episode. So this is not necessarily new information for many of you. However, it's certainly a truth that is very aligned to the strong Black woman syndrome. Having the severe anxiety, having the depressive thoughts, being emotionally burnt out, being physically burnt out, and still having to show up every day for everyone. And I don't know if this resonates with you, but if it does, certainly DM me, shoot me a comment. Let me know how this is really sitting with you all, because I really want to start to build more community around how we move past this strong Black woman syndrome and into spaces where we are healed Black women, okay? Healed Black women who are healthy, wealthy, and enjoying life. Not crying, making our kids breakfast in the morning. Like, that is not okay, you guys. And so with that, I really want to start to get into the healing aspect of how I started to transition from this, if you will, depressed state, unhappy state, to a state of more enjoyment, playfulness, where I am today, healing, talking about it, grateful for the experience, happy with where I've been and where I'm going. It first starts with resolving the burnout. And when I was coming out of the issues with, caring for my mom, Harlow was a young baby. I actually just posted about it today. I did this 30-day yoga challenge. And that was really accelerated this. Okay, I really want to start understanding this mind, body, soul connection. Like, there is something to it. And I started working with essentially a virtual Reiki healer, a master Reiki healer who her name is Elizabeth. I work with her all the time. Her practice is called Soul Synergy. So she really started to develop her own practice of Reiki and light healing virtually. And I would meet with her every day. So what I'm saying is, in resolving this burnout, it's really about starting with the energy healing. And for me, it was Reiki and acupuncture. There's also sound bathing. I see people doing sound baths. There's Tai Chi. There are so many introductory energy healing practices that you can start to do today. Literally, you can turn on YouTube, you can put in sound bath, you can put in healing frequencies, and you can lie there and start to receive healing energetically. And this is different, I would say, from just like the typical like yoga and meditation, because it really starts to move past the body, which meditation certainly does when practiced properly. Yet I know a lot of times when you're beginners, it doesn't feel natural to just sit and like it definitely didn't for me. Like, I'll be falling asleep, I would be all the things. Like, it definitely wasn't the best introductory practice. So that's why I highly recommend energy healing when you can work with someone else, because it becomes almost like a talk therapy, and then you're receiving light, you're receiving energy, and you feel lighter, you feel more, energized, you feel more optimistic about what's going on in your life. And that all happens on an energetic level. So I certainly highly recommend starting with the energy healing, which helps to resolve some of the burnout. Because the burnout, and I want to show you all this picture to help kind of clarify what I'm speaking to, is it's energetic. And so I spoke to this before last week, but I think I'm going to just start showing it more often so that we can really start to understand metaphysically what's happening in our bodies and what we see and what we don't see in our bodies. Because right here we have seven spiritual bodies represented: the etheric, celestial, etheric, astral, mental, emotional, and etheric. And so these are all layers of our body that are connected by chakras, connected by meridians that really impact our day-to-day lives, and we don't even realize it. And a lot of that which we experienced as children or inherited from our grandparents, et cetera, lives in this field because it hasn't necessarily been healed. And when it hasn't been healed, it still exists. And so that's why when people say, oh, this is a hereditary disease, or oh, you're going to get heart attack because the person had a heart attack, it's because energetically, whatever pain or grief your parent or your grandparent experienced, if you aren't healing that, then you're inheriting that shit. That's how it works. And so grief, of course, lives in the heart chakra. So my dad passed away from severe complications with his heart, like multiple heart attacks, congestive heart failure, and that essentially is related to grief. And it doesn't surprise me. I mean, he had a fucking hard life. I mean, he lost his child, he went to prison, like he dealt with a lot of shit as a Black man. And so for me, even in my own healing, I carry a lot on my heart, particularly not just my life experiences, but what I've inherited. So for me, I'm of course can focus on any area of my body in terms of my healing, but I know for sure, at least in this time in my life, I'm really, really focused on my heart healing and opening up my heart for greater love. Because it's really easy to fall back into these depressive states and fall back into these old ways of thinking when not really aligned day to day, because we carry so much of that trauma in our being. So it has to be consciously cleared and continually cleared. Okay. And we start with that energy healing. And so after you do sort of that energy healing, and like I mentioned, starting to resolve generational trauma, that's step 2. The step 2 in resolving that generational trauma, as I spoke to with my dad, and understanding what's happening on a grief level energetically, that's essentially where we start to see the momentum and shifts in our lives. And one thing I love to say is change your energy, change your life. And when we start to do the energy healing, it starts to change how we feel, how we show up, little by little. Remember, we're talking about steps here. This is a sequencing, and I've been doing this work now for 7-8 years. And I want to encourage you to start wherever you are. Like, start where you at. Don't be discouraged by what's happening around you or where you feel you are, because you're absolutely capable of healing exactly where you are. And resolving some of this generational trauma, as I'm mentioning from what I've inherited, is really starting to get at the root cause of the issues that you're having today. And when I talk about this cycle of poverty and this cycle of poverty mindset, it's coming from our programming and coming from our ancestral lineage. And our ancestral lineage is that of the suffering, the Blackness, the womanness, like all of the boundaries and boxes we've been put into over our whole life really contribute to this generational trauma effect, if you will. And so the generational trauma starts to get cleared even more deeply when we start to do the light body work. So when I showed you all that picture of the different etheric bodies, like when you're starting to do some of the Tai Chi and the lighter energy healing, that starts to get at those the etheric, the mental body, the emotional body. And then when you start to get into the generational trauma, you start to get into the higher energies of, and I'll show you guys a picture again, of like the astral body, the etheric body, the celestial bodies. And so this is essentially where you start to do the deeper generational work and the advanced healing techniques that we talked about when I was in Hawaii. So when I went to Hawaii and I started doing plant medicine ceremonies, and I'm working with my shamans, Max and Jasmine, or if you're interested in this, you can talk to me and learn more from me about how to do this. This is when you really start to get at the generational wounds. And clearing those generational wounds takes time. It takes years, okay? And I want to encourage you that all of this is worth pursuing, because what is your happiness? How do you value your happiness? How do you value your peace of mind, your ability to have a long and happy and healthy life? Yes, we can eat good all day. And I know this to be true because I've seen it with my mom. The lady ate perfect her whole life. I used to eat carrots and lunch meat and celery and apples and drink water. And this was her lifestyle. And she worked out. And, she never drank alcohol. She never smoked. She was a very clean woman. Yet here she is in her late 60s, early 70s with dementia. So that's how we know it's not just how you eat, how you sleep. It is something deeper. It is rooted in our emotional body, in our spirit, in our soul. So when we start to understand that it is deeper than the surface level shit, then you really start to understand the value of what I bring and the value of what this energy work really is. And I feel like that's going to have to come with time, and it's going to have to come with in God's timing, for people to really start to see and understand that. But that is essentially who I am, and what I represent is this energy healing, this energy activation, and the clearing and the resolution of generational trauma. That's what I'm here for. That's my purpose. And I know that very clearly. And, I was talking about the healthy lifestyle, but, that essentially is part of it, but it's not the only part of it. And honestly, it's the healthy lifestyle is not even going to be consistent and sustainable if you aren't tending to the emotional aspects of your healing journey. So many years ago, I was, completely sober, no drinking, no nothing, no drugs, no nothing, vegan. I was, you know, really just trying to be like a pure human being, like a monk, like a nun. I really wanted to be a nun. And that was not necessarily an enjoyable experience, but it was a learning experience in that I could eliminate everything from my life. I did all these juice cleanses and water cleanses and fasts, and really was just trying to purify my soul, which I'm sure was really great on some level. But at the end of the day, if I'm not tending to the emotional aspects or the root causes, the energetic aspects of what's bringing me here to begin with, then the healthy lifestyle, all that I had been doing is not sustainable. Me going to the gym multiple times a week, taking supplements every day, giving my mom supplements, giving my son supplements, making sure that we are healthy and happy, it can only be done at a certain level of energy to be sustainable. And even the motivation to do it may not even be there unless you're emotionally sound and ready for it. Because all of this takes work. And I know so much of the spiritual path is about like allowing and trusting and doing less and not trying. Yes, all of those things are correct. But then there is a certain level of work and effort that we have to put in. And a lot of that work and effort comes from the emotional work, the looking at ourselves, the questioning of ourselves, the self-inquiry, y'all, the self-inquiry, and being unafraid to listen to ourselves and not judging, asking ourselves, damn, why I feel like this all the time? Why I can't get right in my relationships? Why am I so, angry when this happens to me? Why can't I ever feel happy? And starting to really ask yourself these questions and be open to the responses that you hear from yourself. Because the self inquiry is how we begin to move and accelerate our healing journey. So when you show up to someone like me or someone who you're trusting in your energy healing process, you're able to really say, "Hey, I was talking to myself and I'm really starting to feel this about my life." Like for me, like a lot of things are rooted in sort of like my upbringing. Like, oh my God, my parents had this experience, or my dad had this experience, and then here I am repeating these patterns. And I don't understand why I'm attracted to men like this, attracted to men that are abusive or emotionally abusive, don't want to help me, don't want to support me. What is happening within my own being that I'm attracting this energy continually? So we want to be able to speak truth to ourselves because we're making these choices in our lives, whether we like them or not, whether we're conscious of it or not. And so we want to be able to have that healthy self questioning, self inquiry, so that we can really start to dialogue with our being and to this last step, really finding a mentor, like I mentioned before, who you can connect with and share that dialogue with. Open that dialogue with. Understand it, explore it. And this is essentially what the metaphysical psychological journey is. Psychology is the study of the mind. Metaphysical psychology is the study of your own mind. It's the study of my own mind. So when I'm looking at my own mind and my own thoughts and my own actions and my own experiences, then I really gotta I gotta sit with that shit. And then not only unravel and unpack what happened, but then how can I solve it? And then working with someone like me or working with an energy mentor is actually how you begin to solve these issues and resolve these issues energetically, and of course in the physical world, because of course we have to exist here too. Yet everything starts in the mind. Everything starts with energy. And so I want to walk you all through those steps again, because I feel like I want to make sure that these solutions are clear, because I spent a lot of time sort of explaining the problem and talking through my own personal experiences. And I want to make sure that we really are clear around the resolution of these things and how we start to first resolve the burnout. I want you to really start to ask yourself, okay, how can I open myself up, if you haven't already, to some new energy healing practices, whether I go see a Reiki practitioner, and Reiki is spelled Reiki. And Reiki can be like, you go to a temple, or you can go to someone's studio, or they can come to your house, and it can look so many different ways, but Reiki is essentially like a light healing. Or you can do acupuncture. I love acupuncture. I'm actually going tomorrow. But it's a beautiful way to tap into the etheric aspects of our being, to open up energy channels and allow the greater flow of energy through our chi, is what they call it in acupuncture, through our being, because sometimes energy gets stuck, and that's why we have cramps or pains or aches in our body. So a lot of times you hear about people going to acupuncture because they have a pain, or they're trying to, quit alcohol or quit smoking or something, because generally there's something energetically blocked in our being that just needs to be opened so that we can flow and have greater stability in our being. So that's what acupuncture is. And a sound bath, like I have sound bowls. You can buy your own sound bowls. You can do it yourself. You can go on YouTube. You can go to Spotify. You can play sound bowls and just lie there and receive the energy. You can go to a sound bowl workshop or event where they have sound bowls, which I love hearing them live and having someone play them for me. I always feel like it's such a beautiful experience. And yes, I want to try Reiki. Yes, Reiki's beautiful. And in Tai Chi, well, I'm a Tai Chi master, so I really got obsessed with Tai Chi. I started just very light practicing, and then it just started to change my life. That's actually where I got the phrase, change your energy, change your life. Because when I started to practice Tai Chi, I really started to see how numb my body was, how it was very difficult for me to even just like have feelings I didn't feel anger for the first time consciously until I practiced my Tai Chi. I was always like this happy-go-lucky person. So I didn't allow myself, I never wanted to be like the angry Black woman. So I was always just like trying to be always happy. And so Tai Chi really allowed the space to explore and feel myself and my body. And I practice with Body and Brain, but there are so many other organizations out there that do Tai Chi really well. And Body and Brain is a Korean organization. I ended up going to Korea to get my Tai Chi master designation, and it was an incredible experience. And so the energy healing is absolutely the first step in starting to resolve some of what I call the strong Black woman syndrome. And yes, and so doing some of that energy work is really a beautiful opportunity to start to step into the work of resolving and removing the generational trauma. And so the generational trauma is really where we are experiencing the anxiety, experiencing what we feel as emotional instability or burnout. And someone has written here that the strong Black woman trope is overrated. Well, obviously, I don't know if this person is a Black woman, but if you're not a Black woman, I don't believe that you could even make that statement, because how can you speak for someone else's experience if you don't have that experience? And this is exactly why I speak to Black women as a Black woman, because I don't know if this person actually heard my personal story, but my experience as a strong Black woman was very significant, and it actually inspired what I do here today in terms of teaching healing, teaching metaphysics, teaching spirituality, because I went through very severe moments and experiences both in my childhood and in my adulthood where the strong Black woman syndrome of anxiety, emotional burnout, fatigue, depression really impacted me. So to say right here that it's overrated is someone who's just speaking from an ignorant perspective. And so, and I invite you, if you want to have a deeper conversation about this, I invite you to DM me and we can continue the conversation, or in the comments, you can leave me a comment and we can discuss it more there. I'd be happy to. I don't shy away from people's opinions about, or their own, what they perceive to be their own truths. And you're saying that you are a Black woman, so I'd be very happy to continue to talk with you about this, because what I'm speaking to in terms of the strong Black woman syndrome is specifically related to anxiety, depression, and emotional burnout, and how women are showing up, every day, doing this hard work and going home and are crying, or unhappy, or depressed, are experiencing, dementia and all of these mental illness symptoms because they're parading and performing as strong when in reality they're suffering. And so a lot of that suffering has, as I mentioned before, comes from generational trauma. And the generational trauma is what we experience from our mothers, from our grandmothers, and essentially in our DNA, in our programming, in media. I've talked about the impact of media on the Black woman image. And a lot of it really starts to, I would say, disrupt our field, for lack of better words, our energy field, and creates this emotional stability. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So she's clarifying that the strong Black woman trope is overrated, and that Black women are human just like everyone else, and we should be allowed to be human. And I couldn't agree with you more that we should be allowed to be human, because this is exactly what this work is about, is that, okay, if we're being hypersexualized in media, and I'm sure you didn't catch the beginning, if our house is divided and the fathers of our children are going to prison, and 70% of our children are growing up in a single household, then in many ways the Black woman is being dehumanized. And this is essentially the problem that I've put forth, is that yes, we should be allowed to be human, but there are so many factors in our society, there's so many factors in our culture, and there are so many factors in our generational lineage, the energetic aspect of it, the metaphysical aspect of it, that are precluding us to show up as human. And she's saying that's your point. We go through stuff too, and people need to acknowledge it 100%. And I'm so glad that you clarified yourself because, I'm using language in terms of like the strong Black woman. I'm using language that's relatable, if you will, maybe incitable, as you were incited by it, calling it overrated, so that we can get to the root of the issue. And the root of the issue is that we're healing, we're human, yet there are so many aspects of our lives that are precluding that healing and that humanity aspect of ourselves, which is why we have to do the work. We can't wait for nobody. Trump ain't finna do it. Although Trump is doing a lot out there, our leadership's not gonna do it. The men aren't gonna do it. Other races aren't gonna do that work for us because they're also human, dealing with their own issues. It is incumbent upon us as Black women to show up for ourselves in doing that work. And the energy healing, first and foremost, is a beautiful way to start. Resolving the generational trauma, absolutely, next step. And then nurturing and cultivating a healthy lifestyle that supports the energy work that you're doing, the generational trauma that you're doing. And trust me, we all slip and fall, y'all. Like I am the one, I'm doing this work because I too struggle with how to maintain this healthy lifestyle, like how to show up for myself, how to not self-sabotage. But there's aspects of me too that are just like at war with myself. Okay? But this is part of the human journey. This is part of the heros gamos. This is part of the hero's journey. And we're showing up in this woman body, in this woman form, in this Black skin. Yet this is the soul's journey. And in that journey, I highly recommend that you have support as the last step, a community to support you. And this is what I'm creating here with the Meta Business Millennial, with Aaron Patton, me supporting you as a mentor. And I believe that this collective work is exactly what's going to sustain us for this generation and for generations to come. That's my commitment to myself and to God and to you. And so I really am so grateful that you all showed up, and we got the clarifications, we got the validations, and I'm certainly so grateful that we can have these open conversations and create these forums for clarifying all that we're going through and refining the process in the healing and getting to where we want to be and seeing our dreams realized. Okay. And so if this resonates with you, if you need support on your journey, I highly recommend you tap in with me, DM me. The woman here that I agree with you that we're strong, but we need to prioritize self-care, mentality, and physicality. Holler at me, because this is exactly the work that I do. And I really want to continue to connect with so many more of you, and do this work so that we can continue to create a movement around Black women healing. Like what it looked like to see all these Black women, beautiful Black women, healed, taking care of themselves, in loving relationships with their partners, kids thriving, beautiful homes, beautiful skin, beautiful edges. You know what I'm saying? Like this is like, heaven on earth for me. And this is the world that we're moving into, is a heaven on earth reality, essentially. We're moving into the golden age. And all that we've known is over, it's behind us, yet we have to heal from it. So it's like you can't forget it. You know what I'm saying? You can forgive it, but you can't forget it, right? But part of that forgiveness is the healing. Okay. So let's do that healing together. And I want you all to, if you haven't already, check out my website, aaronpatton.com. I have a lot of resources there you can tap into. Of course, you can DM me and follow me at I am Aaron Patton. I'm constantly posting clips and tips and inspiration to get you motivated. And of course, if you want to work with me, I would love that, because we need to do this work together. And all that I'm speaking to today can be yours exclusively and uniquely to support you in your healing journey. So with that, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Much love and light. Peace. Did you really love this episode of the Meta Business Millennial podcast? Well, I am honored, and I appreciate you subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends, because your feedback allows us to co-create more enlightened conversations. And if you're interested in growing your soul now, head over to my website, aaronpatton.com, to find all the show notes, links, and free resources to get your energy activated today. In the meantime, stay bright, my friends. Much love and light. Peace.